My mother-in-law tried to set me up. She told her son, my husband, that I am no good, I'm after his money, and then she went ahead to go so far as to try to frame me for fraud. I almost went to jail because of it, but you know what? I'm way ahead of her.
When Ben and I first met, I wasn't sure what to think of him. I was just out of a particularly difficult relationship, and I wasn't looking to get involved with anyone else. He understood that I wasn't ready and, well, offered friendship. It was obvious he felt something stronger than me in friendship, and I also felt more than friendship towards him, but I wasn't really ready to just jump into a new relationship. After a few months, I decided I was ready to take the plunge and accept a date with Ben. My biggest thing is that I wanted to take it as slow as possible. I didn't want to rush into anything. We did take it slow, I'd say about a year into dating. Things looked like they were getting pretty serious. The day Ben proposed, I wasn't surprised. He wasn't very good at keeping surprises, so I suspected it right away. Still, I was beyond happy that he proposed to me and accepted after I was capable of speaking through the tears. Happy tears, of course. Thoughts of marrying Ben had been on my mind for a while, so it wasn't like I wasn't thrilled with this step. Once I accepted, we told our respective families, which was where the trouble started to begin. I know that when one gets married, they aren't just marrying their significant other, but they're marrying into the entire family. This was something I was more than aware of when I got involved with Ben. My relationship with my now father-in-law was fine. He was always not wanting to get in the middle of, was one of those people who was a fence sitter. The relationship I had with Ben's stepmother and sister was a lot more strained. From the moment we made it clear that they did not like me, they would talk about how much they disliked me behind my back, making all these snide comments on social media or in the group text. I did try at first, but eventually realized that they weren't going to like me no matter what I did. They seemed to hate me, actually, from the day we met. I asked Ben one day if his stepmother had been like that with everyone he dated in the past, and the fact that he did not answer right away told me that she had. A part of me wished Ben had told me this before we got together. He did warn me that his family could be a lot, but I could not see it until I met them. Ben's stepmother seemed very, very controlling. This might be one reason why she disliked me, and I could not be controlled, and if Ben was involved with someone, then it would be even more difficult to control her inner family members. How Ben's father dealt with that woman daily was beyond me. I still wanted them to like me, so I tried my best to get them to like me, and like I said, no matter what I did, Ben's sister and mother never changed their opinion of me. At least his father seemed to be okay with me. Eventually, I realized that no matter what I tried, they would never give me their approval. He was always supportive of me and never allowed his stepmother or sister to bad-talk me to my face or his. This angered them, especially my soon-to-be mother-in-law. I once asked him if she had said anything negative about me to him, but he just denied it. It was pretty obvious he was lying, because Ben was many things. A good liar was not one of them. He wasn't lying to me for any specific reason except to spare my feelings. She probably was saying some pretty nasty stuff if Ben was refusing to repeat any of it. The closer we got to the wedding once we were engaged, the more nervous I became. I was convinced that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were going to do something to ruin the event. They were not happy I was marrying Ben, so it seemed like, unlike them, just let it slide. I had my mother, sister, and other family members who told me that they would make sure to keep an eye on the two during the wedding. This was a huge weight off my shoulders because I was going to be stressed enough. To my surprise, the wedding was a smooth affair. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were on their best behavior except for a few snide comments here and there. I was just so happy to be finally marrying Ben that I was able to ignore the sour expressions on their face. If they did try anything, I would not be aware of it. My family and friends probably would not tell me anyways because they didn't want to stress me out. Honestly, in this case, ignorance was truly bliss. I didn't want to know if they tried to ruin my wedding as long as it did not happen. Now we're officially married. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but mostly mother-in-law, was going to have to deal with the fact that I was her daughter-in-law, whether she liked it or not. I was not going anywhere. She may have been able to scare off the other women, but not me. This probably infuriated her to absolutely no end. Everyone else bent to her will except for me, and sometimes I would concede, but this was mostly just because I didn't want to hear most of the drama. Luckily, Ben was more than happy to deal with his mother-in-law most of the time, leaving me completely out of it. When we got back home from the honeymoon, it seemed like my mother-in-law had doubled down on being difficult. She tried to lay out these house rules, such as me always coming home on time and never going to a party without Ben. I almost laughed when she first told me this, but politely but firmly told her, no. Ben and I were both grown. The two of us might live in an apartment on their property, but this did not mean I had to follow her silly house rules. She was not happy I rebuffed her attempts at control and fumed for weeks on social media, posting passive-aggressive posts saying that no one respected their elders anymore, and I just ignored it because it was beneath me to give her attention. While my relationship with my mother-in-law got even worse, my relationship with my sister-in-law did improve. When she ended up going through a divorce from her husband, she was desperately needing to find a lawyer. A relative of mine was a good divorce lawyer, so I recommended him. There were times when you should take the high road, and this was one of those times. We did have our issues in the past, but I didn't want her to get screwed in a divorce. My sister-in-law seemed shocked that I would help her after all the animosity between us, and she eventually went on to apologize profusely and was just going off what her stepmother or mother-in-law was saying. I told her it was water under the bridge if my sister-in-law was willing to see the error of her ways, when I would forgive her for all the baseless rumors and gossip that she had engaged in with my mother-in-law. Most of the time, I just ignored my mother-in-law and decided that if she wanted to waste all her energy hating me, then she could go ahead and do that. I was focusing on my marriage and my career, both of which were much more important than her. Perhaps I should have been paying attention, but I don't know if I could have foreseen what length she would be willing to go to split us up for good. I mean, who could hate someone that much to do that? My mother-in-law did. I didn't learn anything was wrong until I was approached by my husband one day after coming home from work. He was furious, and I don't think I'd seen him that angry. When I asked him what was wrong, he told me that it wasn't cute for me to play dumb. What I needed to do was just come clean about what I did. All I could do was stare at him blankly because I had no idea what he was talking about, and I pressed for more information. And he snapped that it was irresponsible of me to take his credit card, which was in his name only, and book a trip to Bali for 4 people. My first thought was that someone got a hold of his card. I mean, come on. But the purchase was made from this area, so it wasn't Ben. Then it had to be me. I denied it immediately because I had not done it. If I were to book such an expensive trip, I would talk to him first. Spending that much money on something so expensive was a decision that I had to be made together. It could not just be made with one person. Ben did not believe me. He went into a tirade about how the stepmom was right about me being a careless woman and a gold digger. The words hurt, but I refused to let myself break down in front of Ben. I told him if he wanted to believe I was then so be it. If he didn't apologize within a week, then I was going to leave and go stay with my parents. He ended up canceling the trip, but I didn't care. I never wanted to go on that trip anyways. This entire situation was beyond my comprehension. I wondered if my mother-in-law was involved in some way, but did not think that she would be willing to commit fraud to get rid of me. At this point, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to save this marriage after everything Ben had said to me the other night. He always had my back with his family, and him not having it this time hurt in ways I could not even describe. I meant what I said, though. If Ben did not apologize to me, then I was going to stay with my parents until we could figure out what to do. The last thing I wanted to do was end my marriage over this, but I would not allow Ben to talk to me like that. It wasn't right or fair when I've done nothing wrong to deserve it. Giving a deadline almost seemed childish. I just didn't see any other option. The time ticked away, and I expected Ben to apologize, but guess what? He didn't. He remained stubbornly quiet about everything. Much to my dismay, of course. I was not happy about this because he had some cruel things to say to me. When I spoke to my parents, they told me to come stay with them immediately and said some less nice things about old Ben. I told them I was going to stick to the plan and give Ben a chance to redeem himself. He had never proven me wrong before, so I was hopeful that he would come through in the end. If only I could figure out how that trip to Bali was charged to the credit card in the first place. Update number 1. Sister-in-law drops a bombshell of truth. Y'all, while I did not expect this to happen, I can't say I'm surprised given what I know about my mother-in-law. My sister-in-law came to me about 3 days after my fight with Ben. Ben or my mother-in-law must have contacted her about what was going on, because I know I sure as hell did not. I was apprehensive when I first accepted the call, and then my sister-in-law told me that she knew I was telling the truth about the trip. "How do you know that?" I asked. She went to tell me that her stepmom had contacted her and started mocking me. My mother-in-law must have forgotten that my sister-in-law had made up a long time ago because she confessed the whole thing. It was she who somehow got her hands on my husband's credit card and purchased the tickets to Bali. The reason she did this was to frame me, so I could fit the gold digger narrative that she was determined to make me fit. For a brief moment, I thought my mother-in-law would not do something so stupid, so crazy. But apparently, I had been very, very wrong. I can't believe she would go so far as to steal her son's credit card. It was so bizarre and beyond comprehension. Before I could ask my sister-in-law anything else, she told me that she had proof that my mother-in-law had done it too. She had secretly recorded the phone call, which had mother-in-law admitting to sister-in-law that she was the one who took the card. I'd say the worst part is that my mother-in-law sounded all giddy about the whole thing. She was convinced that this would get rid of me for good. I didn't know what to feel at first, but thanked my sister-in-law for telling me the truth. Even though she didn't have to record the phone call and come forward, she did it anyway. After she sent me the proof of the phone call, I debated on what step to take next. Ultimately, I decided the first person I wanted to talk to was Ben. The two of us had a talk about it, and I wanted an apology, of course, but we also needed to figure out what we were going to do about his stepmother. So, I waited for Ben to get home that day. I had the day off, which gave me lots of time to think and figure out exactly what I wanted to say and do, and when he came home and walked into the living room, I started playing the phone call without warning. He paused in confusion and asked me, "What is this?" "Proof. Proof of who bought the tickets to Bali." I got up and I left my phone out there for the entire call while it was playing, and I just sat in my bedroom and tried to calm myself down as I waited for Ben. Soon enough, I heard footsteps, leaning towards the bedroom. The two of us ended up talking for a few hours because we had a lot of stuff to chit-chat about. After we finished talking, one thing was clear. Something had to be done about mother-in-law. She could not get away with charging Ben's credit card and putting us in a difficult financial spot. I'll update you guys soon enough. Update. Everybody went to Hawaii. I planned to update you guys about Ben confronting my mother-in-law. He confronted her all right, but wow, the plan he came up with was beyond what I could have imagined. What Ben wanted to do was give my mother-in-law a taste of her own medicine, and I was all for it. When Ben sent a group text about us all going on a trip to Hawaii, my mother-in-law did not bat an eyelash. Ben made sure to make it sound like I was not going. In reality, I was going. I was going to be waiting at the airport for the rest of the family. Minus my mother-in-law, of course. My mother-in-law was completely in the dark until Ben drove to the police station rather than the airport where she thought we were going. From what Ben said afterward, she looked absolutely terrified. She looked at everyone who did not look surprised because they were in on it. Even father-in-law. I was shocked when Ben told me he took a chance and told his dad, only to have him agree that what his wife did was a step too far this time. It had to be difficult for him to do that, but Ben and I were grateful that he was willing to do what was right. Ben told my mother-in-law in the car that we all knew the truth thanks to the phone call my sister-in-law had recorded. We were going to hand over the call recording to the police and officially press charges against her for fraud. Oh, I almost wish I've been there to hear how she was begging and wailing for them not to do that. She tried to say at first that I faked the phone call, but it quickly became obvious that this is a lie and it's not going to work. So, my mother-in-law tried another different tactic. What she had done was for Ben. He might not be able to see it now, but it was the only way she could think of to get him out of my evil clutches. Yes, she used those exact words. The delusion that woman had towards me was absolutely mind-boggling insane. I mean, I've never been mean to her. Perhaps I insulted her unintentionally at some point, but this did not give her an excuse to take the actions that she did. Ben was willing to give his stepmom a chance to turn herself in. She refused so, and he told her to get out of the car and find her own damn way home. He drove back to the airport where I was waiting, and I asked him to tell me everything. We had a flight to catch, so he had to tell me some of it while we were on the plane, but let me tell you this, it was all worth it. My mother-in-law never saw any of this coming. She thought that she had the upper hand the entire time, when in fact she did not. My mother-in-law did come pretty close to nearly breaking up my marriage, though, but luckily Ben and I were able to keep it together. Update. Hawaii is amazing. I did not think I was going to update so quickly, guys, but it's been about 2 weeks since we got back from Hawaii, and I have to gush about the trip for a second. Father-in-law paid the majority of the trip, and this was his way of saying that he was sorry for not accepting the harsh reality of the situation. He should have not just stood on the sideline or taken her side during the rare moments he did choose a side. She was his wife, so I cannot completely blame him. Still, I wish he had been able to see it before we had to go to such extremes to prove how sick his wife was. I asked Ben not to inform me of anything going on with my mother-in-law. This was my vacation, so I just wanted to enjoy it without thinking about her. Ben understood and respected my wishes, and I did not hear anything about my mother-in-law until the airplane back home. When it touched down at the airport, it was surreal to be back home after enjoying a week-long vacation trying to forget our woes. I didn't realize how much stress my mother-in-law had brought to not only my marriage but also to my life. She had been so against me that it was amazing I had stayed strong for as long as I did. But now, my mother-in-law's had charges officially filed against her. She looks to be trying to fight the charges right now, which honestly does not surprise me. This woman is quite delusional. She believes that she can somehow get off with just a slap on the wrist. For the time being, I think she's been staying with a sister who lives nearby, but this is just second-hand information I've collected. I have no more contact with this woman, and I don't want to either. My husband and sister-in-law have not spoken to her either, but I don't know if I can say the same about my father-in-law. He had mentioned that he started speaking to her again, but did not tell us why. It was none of our business, and if my father-in-law did not want to tell us why he decided to talk to his wife again, then he did it. I remained sympathetic because, again, this was his wife. Whether she was a terrible person or not did not change the fact. It was one evening at a family dinner when my father-in-law finally told us why he had been in recent contact with his wife. He dropped the bomb just before dessert. Guys, I filed for divorce and had your stepmom serve divorce papers. Mother-in-law flipped her lid when she found out about the divorce. She started harassing us with phone calls and even went as far as to slash my father-in-law's car tires. We had our car in the garage, luckily, but had they been parked outside, she would have done that to ours as well. After convincing father-in-law to install some cameras, there were no more issues, but the harassing emails, texts, and phone calls continued. That is until we promised to file harassment charges on top of everything else. Update. Here's a shocker for ya. Hey everybody, I know it's been a while since the last update, but there just wasn't much to say then. Since I late update, we've all just been slowly moving forward with our lives and waiting to see what happens with the case against mother-in-law. I thought she would be willing to go to court for this. However, at last minute, she agreed to, plead guilty. In the end, what she received was 90 days in jail, in exchange for paying back what she had spent as well as a fine issued by the state for the credit card fraud. This was the best for which I could have hoped for. While I didn't want to look her in the eyes and explain to a judge what she had done, this kept things simple and made it less of a headache. All of us were just trying to move on with our lives and keep pushing forward. If this case was still hanging over us, then there would be no way to put it behind us. To think my mother-in-law was going to be spending any time in jail is crazy. I can't imagine what was going through her mind. She probably thought it wasn't fair, and I bet she thought she was specifically being targeted somehow. Like I said, that woman was delusional. She had attempted to reach out to my husband, sister-in-law, and father-in-law, and no one took her calls, including my father-in-law. I heard one of the messages that she left on the voicemail, and it started sweet, but then shifted into calling him a bunch of derogatory terms. If she thought that was going to get him to reconsider the divorce, then she's absolutely losing her marbles. This was only going to push father-in-law further away and just want to speed up the process. Ironically, he was using the same lawyer my sister-in-law had used during her divorce. He was a family member and a great divorce lawyer. The lawyer was even nice enough to give my father-in-law a discount, which he didn't have to do. The divorce had not happened yet, but it was only a matter of time before my mother-in-law would be known as my former mother-in-law. I think the day that finally happened, I would end up doing a little dance in the streets. I'd no longer be tied to her in any manner. Had she just tried to accept me or stick to posting passive-aggressive crap, I think she's done all this on her own is the crazy part. If she's on Facebook, then she'd probably still be married to my father-in-law if she didn't go crazy. She was still blaming me, but she had no one to blame but herself. Ben and I have been inviting our father-in-law over to the apartment or going to his house now that mother-in-law isn't there. We're trying to keep him company and his mind off of everything. To be honest, it seems to be working for the most part. Final update, the divorce is final. Hey guys, I think this will probably be the last update unless my former mother-in-law ends up doing something crazy again. Knowing her, she probably will do something at some point, but she's finishing up her jail sentence right now, so there's no chance of her doing anything yet. If you notice, I'm using the term former mother-in-law and guess that the divorce was now final, then you're right. My father-in-law's no longer married to my monster of an ex-mother-in-law. He seems a lot happier now that the divorce is final, and one thing he made crystal clear was that he had no intention of dating anytime soon or at all. He just wanted to enjoy his family and focus on his hobbies and himself. I don't think he had been able to do that while married to my ex-mother-in-law. There was a lot of things about his marriage that he continued to keep private, and I respected that. He just wanted to heal, the same as Ben and I. Since the fight Ben and I had all those months ago, we've been trying our best to heal from it. It wasn't easy, but we were finally able to put this behind us. He still apologized for the things that he said that day, and I told him it's not necessary to keep apologizing, but Ben said he never should have said something so horrible to me. When my ex-mother-in-law does finally get out, we'll be in our new apartment, about which she will not know. Ben suggested to my father-in-law that he should consider selling the home and moving to a place where my ex-mother-in-law would simply not be able to find him. He refused, however, saying this was his house for the past 20 years, and it's where he was going to stay. The reason why we're staying in the apartment on the property in the first place was to save money, so we could afford our place during the first few years of our marriage. You won't be surprised to hear that it was my ex-mother-in-law's idea for us to stay with her. I think she would have rather Ben was just living with her, and I was somewhere else far, far away. Sometimes, I wonder how we got through the entire wedding without her wearing black, or trying to spill wine on my dress, or just straight up trying to object while we're in the middle of saying our vows. It was a miracle! It all went as well as it did. Come next week, we'll be in our new place. It was a little smaller than the older apartment, but you know what? I love the cozy feeling of the vibe that it gives. That's around the same time my ex-mother-in-law will be getting out of jail. So the timing could not be more perfect. She can try whatever she wants when she finally gets out. I know that we're the ones who, have come out of this on top, and her life is not going to be how it once was. My ex-monster-in-law did this to herself.
So it's just another story where a mother-in-law is absolutely out of control. I think it's actually hilarious that they tricked her into thinking that they were going to some luxurious vacation in Hawaii and ends up sending her to the police station. I mean, what would you guys have done if you find out that your stepmom has stolen your credit card, made fun of your wife, tried to spend a bunch of money to go on a Bali trip using the fraudulent credit card charges, and then tried to blame it on OP? I mean, this story was wild, and I just want to know what you guys would do if you were in this position. Thank you for joining me today, guys. My name's Mr. Redito, and we do stories like this every single day. If you do want to be a part of these daily narrations, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button. That way you support the channel and you never miss an upload. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, and of course, just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!